Have you ever had one of those days, the kind where you get to the end and you don't feel like you've really lived? You feel like you've just survived, like the only goal was just to make it through? Well, if that feeling is a little too familiar, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to dig into a huge shift in psychology that's all about moving from just getting by to actually living a full, meaningful life. So let me just ask you straight up, are you surviving or are you flourishing? And look, that's not just some deep philosophical question. It's actually the key question that's driving this massive change in modern psychology, a change that's totally redefining what it means to live a good life in this crazy, fast-paced world of ours. All right, so here's the game plan for today. We're going to start by unpacking that huge shift from survival to flourishing. Then we'll take a trip through the three big waves of what's called positive psychology. After that, we'll get real about some of the modern dangers to our well-being, and then finally, we'll look at where all of this is headed. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first. We need to understand this massive change in thinking, this paradigm shift from a psychology of just surviving to a psychology of truly flourishing. You see, for the longest time, psychology was mostly built on what we call the disease model. The focus was always on what's wrong with you, anxiety, depression, trauma, and the whole goal was to get someone from, say, a -10 back up to 0, back to neutral. It was all about fixing what was broken. But then positive psychology came along and just completely flipped the script. It started asking, hey, what's right with people? The goal isn't just to get to 0, it's to go from 0 all the way to a +10. Think about it like this. The old model was kind of like taking care of a wilting plant, just giving it enough water so it doesn't die. That's survival. Positive psychology is about creating the perfect soil, the perfect sunlight, so that plant can explode into this spectacular bloom. And that's flourishing. So where did this whole revolution get its start? Well, that takes us to the first wave, which was all about one thing, the science of happiness. You can really see how this field grew up by looking at these three big waves. It all kicked off in the late 90s, really focusing on individual happiness. Then, around the mid-2000s, things got a lot more interesting, a lot more complex, as the field started to accept and even integrate the dark side of life. And that brings us to today, in the 2020s, where the focus is now on systems and how we can all flourish together. Let's start at the beginning, though. So the first wave, let's call it PP 1.0, was really launched by a psychologist named Martin Seligman. And back then, the focus was laser sharp on the individual. What are your personal strengths, your positive emotions, your happiness? It was very scientific, all about the hard data. But, it had some problems. The big critique was that it was super individualistic, and most of the research was done on people from Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies, what researchers call weird contexts. It basically ignored how most of the world experiences life. And those very valid critiques led to a much-needed evolution, the second wave. This is where things get really interesting, because it started to embrace complexity and find strength in what you might call the dark side of life. This was a game changer. The second wave realized that a good life isn't about just chasing happiness and avoiding pain. No way. It's about integrating it all. It took on this kind of yin and yang philosophy, this idea that our greatest strengths, our deepest sense of meaning, often come directly from confronting life's biggest challenges, not from pretending they don't exist. So this second wave, PP 2.0, was just so much more nuanced. It finally acknowledged that going through tough times can actually be transformative. It started paying serious attention to culture and context, right? Realizing that what works in one culture might not in another. It also moved away from this black and white good versus bad way of thinking and started using all sorts of different research methods to really capture the richness of what it means to be human. And that brings us pretty much up to today. We're now in the third wave, which takes this whole idea even further. Now we're moving beyond just the individual to focus on how we can flourish together. See, in this third wave, the goal isn't just happiness anymore. The goal is flourishing. And that's a much bigger, much richer concept. It's not just about a good mood that comes and goes. It's a state of optimal functioning where you're really firing on all cylinders, realizing your full potential. It's all about finding this deep, harmonious balance. So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, luckily, we have the PERMA model to break it down into 5 core parts. P is for positive emotion, the everyday feelings of joy, gratitude, contentment. E is for engagement. That's when you're so absorbed in something you love that you totally lose track of time. We often call that a state of flow. R is for relationships, our vital, positive connections with other people. M stands for meaning, that feeling of belonging to and serving something bigger than ourselves. And finally, A is for accomplishment, that sense of mastery and achievement. When you've got all 5 of these things working together, that's when we're truly flourishing. Okay, but as these ideas have become more popular, they've also created some new, very modern dangers. It's absolutely crucial that we know how to spot and navigate the pitfalls of all this positivity talk. And the biggest trap out there is something called toxic positivity. Let's be clear, healthy positivity acknowledges that suffering is real. It validates that struggles are legitimate. It's about building the resources to deal with reality. But toxic positivity? It just slaps a smiley face sticker on everything. It's that good vibes only nonsense that totally invalidates real pain. Telling someone who's in a terrible situation to just be more resilient isn't helpful. It's actually harmful. It shifts the blame from a broken system onto the individual. Now for another modern danger, and this one comes from a place that might surprise you. Artificial intelligence. As Dr. Tyler Vanderweel from Harvard puts it so well, things that offer us short-term relief from something like loneliness can end up causing profound, long-term harm. Let's talk about AI relational chatbots. AI designed to be your friend or even your romantic partner. These things pose a serious threat to our ability to flourish. Sure, they might make you feel less lonely for a minute, but they actually hamper our ability to build real face-to-face relationships. And AI is designed to be perfectly agreeable, which creates totally unrealistic expectations for our messy, complicated, actual human beings. It weakens our social muscles. The bottom line is this: we cannot outsource our meaning, our relationships, and our joy and still expect to flourish. It just doesn't work that way. So where does that leave us? Well, the future of flourishing is really about recognizing that this isn't just about us as individuals. It's a shared responsibility in a world that is deeply, deeply interconnected. In fact, researchers are already talking about an emerging fourth wave. This next big step is all about connecting the science of well-being directly to our biggest global challenges, things like sustainability, social equity, and public health. It's about reframing our personal well-being not just as some private goal, but as a critical piece of the puzzle for solving the world's most urgent problems. And that brings us right to our final and maybe most important question. The conversation has moved so far beyond just, how can I be happier? It's become something much bigger, something much more important for all of us. It's no longer about just surviving the day. The real challenge now is asking, how can we all flourish in a sustainable way together? That is the question we all need to start asking.